Kamala Harris has had a shocker of a week, and it was made so much worse by the fact that Donald Trump is only getting stronger and more popular in the lead up to the election. Both presidential hopefuls have been zipping across the country, partaking in interviews and rallies, but their performances couldn't be any more different. As Kamala Harris crumbled on Fox News, Donald Trump flexed his might and thrashed Bloomberg during a live interview. Sky News All Stars Gabriella Power, Rita Panahi and Douglas Murray take a look at the last few days on the campaign trail that punctuate the demise of Kamala Harris and the continued rise of Donald Trump. Kamala Harris had arguably her worst ever interview performance yesterday on Fox News. The VP crumbled under tough questioning from Bret Baier, with the Democrats still reeling from the embarrassing performance, says Sky News All-Star Rita Panahi.
Today was a bad day for the Kamala Harris campaign. Her interview on Fox News was a train wreck, a hot mess on a number of levels. In Bret Baier, she faced a real interviewer who asked pertinent questions about the border, inflation, her record, and she floundered. She was evasive, she was incoherent, she was sometimes nonsensical. Whoever in her team thought she was ready for a real interview should be sacked immediately.
Sky News All-Star Gabriella Power agrees, saying the Fox interview exposed her.
With less than 20 days to go until polling day in America, Kamala Harris has nowhere to hide anymore. She's avoided hard interviews her entire election campaign up until today. Her interview on Fox News has just exposed her.
And Turning Point Action spokesperson Caitlin Sinclair went further, saying the interview ruined her entire campaign.
Well, whoever encouraged Kamala Harris to do an interview with Fox News host Bret Baier, I want to personally send a thank you note to whoever that staffer was, because ultimately this interview has just ruined her entire campaign. I think every American should watch this interview with Kamala Harris and Bret Baier, and it will really show she cracked at the first non-softball interview that was in front of her. And these were not got you questions, right? If every American watches this interview, Bret Baier was not trying to catch her in a I got you moment. These were policy questions, these were agenda questions, these were questions about the last 3.5 years of her administration questions, and she completely failed to answer any of them.
Sky News host Paul Murray says the interview exposed how desperate the Harris camp is getting as they were playing tricks to minimise the time spent with Fox.
Well, this was supposed to be a 30-minute interview. It was supposed to start at 5 p.m. It was supposed to conclude at 5:30. So the production team at Fox News would be able to turn it around and play it on the show that Bret Baier hosts at 6 p.m. in the United States each and every night. But guess what? She turned up late, and they tried to shrink the amount of time, which might explain why he went in so hard so early. Here's Bret explaining how they tried to move the goalposts.
So we were supposed to start at 5 p.m. This was the time they gave us. Originally, we were going to do 25 or 30 minutes. They came in and said, well, maybe 20. So it was already getting whittled down. And then the vice president showed up about 5:15. We were pushing the envelope to be able to turn it around for the top of the 6 o'clock. So that's how it started. And I could tell when we started talking that she was going to be tough to redirect without me trying to interrupt.
Now, without boring you about the technology, he normally works out of Washington, but as you can see, that interview was happening in Pennsylvania, which meant that it had to be sent back to the head office, which is why, as the tape is rolling, you have to stop it at the end and then turn it around. It's digital now, but you get my point. There is a little moment of time to turn things around. By deliberately turning up late and then trying to speed things up, she knows that there's going to be less time for the conversation. So Bret Baier basically decided to start the interview in the middle of the conversation and hit her straight between the eyes.
And after Harris's disastrous Fox News interview, Sky News All-Star Douglas Murray has given the VP some honest advice.
Looking increasingly likely that Kamala Harris is going to appear on Joe Rogan's program, on his podcast, who's audience is massive. If you were advising her, would you recommend that she be a guest on the Joe Rogan Experience?
No, I would not. She has ducked all of the difficult interviews that she could have done. The fact that the Democrats are currently putting her out there is actually a sign that she's not doing well, or she's not doing as well as she should be doing in the polls. The Democrat plan has been hide Kamala from the cameras to any extent that you can. And specifically don't get her onto anything where there could be details expected. You can get her on The View, you can get her on a couple of other just sort of puff pieces. You can get her on the cover of Vogue, of course. But whatever you do, don't get her anywhere tough. Joe Rogan is an extraordinarily talented podcaster and interviewer. And he's interesting because, among other things, he just follows things where they lead. Now, I sometimes disagree with where he follows them, and certainly where many of his guests have followed them. But the point is, it's an extraordinarily free-rolling conversation. Kamala Harris hasn't been exposed to a free-rolling conversation in her time in elected office. And that's because when she rolls, frankly, she rolls all over the place. And what's more, I'm sure her team will say cut, after an hour. But if this was going to be one of Joe Rogan's mega podcasts, where he runs to 3 hours fairly easily, what are the odds that Kamala Harris will not say at least one thing during those hours, which is so off the beaten track and makes so little sense that it's actually a massive liability for her and her campaign? I would say very high, very high. Maybe she is toying with it, but wow, is it a bad idea?
But as Kamala Harris was drowning this week, Donald Trump was thriving. His interview with Bloomberg news editor-in-chief John Micklethwaite exposed his strength and popularity as he accused Bloomberg for spreading fake news to the applause of the live crowd in Chicago.
What does the Wall Street Journal know? I'm meeting with them tomorrow. What does the Wall Street Journal know? They've been wrong about everything. So have you, by the way. You've been wrong about
You're trying to turn this. You've
been wrong.
No, you're trying to turn this into debate. There are business people.
You're wrong. You've been wrong. You've been wrong all your life on this stuff.
Trump was also given a very warm welcome at a barbershop in the Bronx.
Nice to see you all. Welcome. It's our pleasure. How good are the barbers here? Excellent. Very good. I can see they're good. Yeah. Nice soft floor. What's that all about? That's the back. It is the back. Nice to see you all. Big hands. Strong guy. Nice to see you. So you're the owner?
My son is the owner.
And to top off Kamala's bad week, she was booed for not turning up to the Al Smith dinner.
And while we're very sorry that Vice President Harris cannot make it here in person, we will be joined by her later via video.
In contrast, Donald Trump gave a lengthy address at the dinner where he roasted Kamala Harris.
But I know this isn't my normal crowd tonight, because it just isn't. It's not my normal crowd. Believe me, my normal crowd is younger, has a lot more energy, but you have certain advantages too, like cash, lots of cash. But many of you are Manhattan liberals from the media and the Democrat Party. I always say the Democrat, Chuck doesn't like that, he likes Democratic, and it sounds much more beautiful, the Democratic Party. I always say the Democrat Party because it sounds worse. It is true. He likes Democratic. Why don't they just change the name? This way, it is Democrat. But I must say I was shocked when I heard that Kamala was skipping the Al Smith dinner. I'd really hoped that she would come because we can't get enough of hearing her beautiful laugh. She laughs like crazy.
He was then given a standing ovation by the crowd.